The information provided on lifeinterruptedradio.com is for educational purposes only.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And as always, it's my honor and pleasure to be with you here for another special episode. And we are starting our 6th year now in January. This is January, and we're starting our 6th year. I can't believe that. Oh my gosh, it's been a crazy wild ride. And I've met the most amazing people. Tonight, I have a return guest that we have on every so often because she's just awesome. And I call her our resident health and wellness expert. Her name is Roberta Mittman. And Roberta is a dedicated alternative healthcare practitioner and health and wellness coach. She's an internationally recognized speaker, author, and licensed acupuncturist. She's also the founder of Park Avenue Center for Wellbeing in New York City, and a dear, dear friend of mine. I just love talking to her. So welcome back to the show, Roberta.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. It's always such a pleasure to be here, really. And it's like the start of a new year. What could be better?
What could be better? And we're about almost through the January. I don't know where it's going, but this is about the time where people are starting to throw in the towel of New Year's resolutions.
Oh,
and
totally.
I know you and I have talked about it before. You have a different take on these New Year resolutions. So share with us what your take on it is.
Well, I always laugh a little bit because, they're just such nice dreams without a plan, wish without a plan or something like that. I forgot what the expression is. All I know is I go into the gym and the first few weeks, I'm a little bit like, they're on my favorite machine. I want it back. But I know that 2 weeks later, it will be there waiting for me because everyone has gone back, have retreated from their plans. So I just feel that it's a nice idea to have plans, but too many people are coming up with unrealistic plans, or they're just kind of loose steam, as you know, because we kind of refresh this conversation every year. But there are some things that people are actually, I heard some of my clients and patients talk about, and so I thought, well, we could talk about some of the things not to be putting on your to-do list, not to be putting on your New Year's resolution list, because there might be some kinder, gentler ways of accomplishing the same thing, the same goal. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's great. Share with us some of those things you're hearing that you're going,
Right. Well, I thought that most of my patients would know from talking to me that diet sodas are like, no, you can't do that. But some people are still hanging on to them a little bit longer. So, some people like when they want to lose weight, go on another diet, cut out the sugar, which of course is probably not a bad thing. So they turn to like diet things and low fat foods. So those are very questionable, I think. And the diet, because of course they have artificial sweeteners, which are probably just as addictive and sweeter than regular sugar. I don't think you're filling your body for 1 second. And it also gives people permission to eat or drink more of those things when they say, oh, it's low calorie, or it's a diet food, or low fat. I mean, sometimes those things are just like going to be overdone, overeaten, and I just think they backfire. What have you seen?
Well, the things when I read, one of the things that you taught me years ago, read the label, Sharon. So when I read the label, especially of those diet foods, which I stay away from because there's so many things I can't pronounce. And one of the things you told me years ago is if you can't pronounce it, don't put it in your mouth. But I'm reading there and I see a lot of sodium in those types of things too, which I'm going, okay, that can't be good either. So I'm all about reading the labels now. I've never been a diet drink type of fan. I never liked the taste, but I know I have a lot of friends that do fall into that trap of, oh, but Sharon, there's no calories. Yeah, but gosh, look at all the other stuff in there that you can't pronounce. What is that doing to your body?
Good point. Absolutely. And they really are doing more harm than actually the sugar probably will, because your body knows what to do with this sugar. It's not great, of course, but the artificial sweeteners, they don't really know what to do. And it really can drive up a lot of like blood pressure and a lot of other problems like that. So here's what my suggestion is going to be. My suggestion, instead of drinking diet soda, would be to have infused water. So now, they make a lot of flavored waters, which if they're natural, you can buy them and drink them. Sometimes they're sparkling, sometimes they're not. But if you have like a spa water type thing, if you could learn, somebody could learn to really enjoy those and put in a seasonal fruit or berries or some kind of, something that makes a difference, lemon, lime. I happen to like berries and mint and things like that. I find that to be so much more refreshing than any of the other sodas. And I suppose I like that carbonation, so I'll make it with sparkling water.
I like to make those too. And we had Dr. Dana Cohen on, oh gosh, a while ago.
Oh,
I'm thinking
yes.
we have to have her back. And her book,
Yeah.
Quench. And in the back of that, she's got amazing recipes for waters that taste great and that have all sorts of extra great nutrients and things in them for you. And one of my favorite, which is super simple, is I like to slice up cucumbers really thin and just put it in the water, put it in the refrigerator for a couple of hours. And I find cucumber water super refreshing.
I feel like I'm at a spa just listening to you. Yes. Yes, that's perfect. I love that. So that would be my suggestion. The other thing is to go, when people go back to the low fat foods, that is part of the 80s lie that was perpetuated and began this whole cycle of diabetes and all kinds of problems, because low fat food is code for higher sugar foods. We have to put in something when they take out something, and when they take out the fat, they put in the sugar because it's got to taste good. So I am encouraging people to read the labels, look at the sugar grams, and see like what are they eating, because the fat doesn't make anybody fat. It really doesn't. And some of the healthier fats, such as the salmon, avocado, nuts, things like that, I mean, those are amazing. But even when you look at other foods that are called low fat, you'll see that they're higher in sugar than their regular standard counterpart. So it really backfires again. And I would really encourage people to, either avoid that food altogether or perhaps eat the higher fat version, which is lower in sugar. That could be a little controversial, but I'm just saying that's my view only.
Well, I know when I'll say I gave up sugar, but I'm not a freak about it. I mean, I realize it's in a lot of things, and if it happens to be a couple of grams in something, okay. But I'm not going after the way I used to. I'll say desserts and high sugar items that I just, scream high sugar. And what the interesting thing to me was, for years, I thought the sugar gave me a little boost of energy. And then when I got off sugar, like I said, I'm not crazy, insane about like, sugar, but I felt like I had so much more energy when I'm eating fresh fruits and vegetables. So I'm getting some sugar there in the fruits, but it's a natural type of sugar. I felt I got a boost of energy when I became unaddicted to sugar. And I'd read that so many people say, oh, it's so hard. And I'm going to say it wasn't super easy, but making that decision just to say, I'm going to just do this, after, I don't know, maybe At the most, it was 10 days. I didn't crave it anymore. I never really thought about it anymore.
That's the most amazing part of trying to make these changes, and your body responds in kind. Because yes, so many people will say that when they're off of sugar, their cravings really disappear, and it takes a little while for them to get over that, really, like that hump where it's a little difficult, because there's so many habits that are built in, like traditions. Like every time I sit down and watch TV, I have this. Or every time I sit down or I'm driving, I have that. You know, it's just sometimes we have to pull apart the threads and be mindful and kind of substitute something else. But the low sugar, idea is a great idea. But, sometimes I think that if you deprive yourself of all sweet things, you're just dying for the brownie. You could be like going through your kitchen having 100 different things, when really the only thing that's going to satisfy you is the brownie. And I think we need to like make that call and say, deprivation and just totally like restriction can backfire that way, because it's all you're thinking about is that brownie. So sometimes I think to make the call is like, okay, it's in moderation, and this is what I need. And if it's going to win this race, then it's just going to win. Enjoy it, be done with it, and move on. I think there's like too much energy put into like, you can't have this, you can't have that. It's just really exhausting. And who wants to live like that? I know I don't.
Well, I don't either. And yet, I'm thinking about a time years ago, I was addicted to soda. And one day I pulled it out of the refrigerator, and it had a can, and I popped open the lid. And there was a moment of realizing just hearing the pop and the fizz made me feel better. I realized that this was more than just some sort of need, that there was this weird psychological component to having this can of soda. And that's when I went on my quest to get off soda. But it was this moment of realizing it wasn't just the taste of the soda. There was more involved in my psyche going on, when all of a sudden you can feel stress relief just hearing the pop and the fizz. I was like, wow, okay, there's something deeper here I have to explore.
I think that's so wise. I could just see you going down to your refrigerator constantly just popping cans.
Well, that could be a solution.
That's the solution. We just need like cans that pop and have a fizz, That's perfect. Somebody should patent that. I think that's a great idea. There's just so many different like thoughts and things that go behind it, because what the brownie is like serving for somebody is not going to be solved by the brownie. We all know that. It certainly is a little bit, deeper. Is it like anger? Is it annoyance? Is it loneliness? Is it like, I don't know, it could be any emotion that somebody's going through. And sometimes it's worth thinking about it. Just press the pause button, I like to say, and think about, what are you feeling just at that moment? Just name the emotion. Like, I'm really like, I have like resentment at my son for blah, blah, blah. I mean, just saying resentment is enough. And if you just think about that many times, it will just kind of say, okay, like I get that, and we can do something about that. But the brownie's not going to fix it. It could make you feel better for a minute. If you can have it without any guilt or remorse, then be my guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that just takes me so many ways. So, well, we covered diet pretty well here. We might end up down that rabbit hole again, but what are some other ones that you find that people tend to get trapped in? They're thinking that it's a really good resolution, and yet at some point in time, as they're trying to put it into practice, they realize um, it really backfires on them.
Yes, totally. So one of the other things I think I mentioned to you is saying that I have to go to the gym. So that's one quick thing. And that is, imposing this movement that's never going to work. And I'm just saying, it's great if you can start to like it and find something you love to do, but that's the name of the game, finding something that you love to do. Even if it's at home and you want to like put on music and dance, or you want to take walks or something. No one says you have to clock in time at the gym. I mean, I'm not, maybe somebody has and you must, but I don't know very many people. I think movement, enjoyable movement is the key. So that's one of the things. So don't feel like, oh my God, I haven't gone to the gym. Like I said, I would, that's just, another way we can beat ourselves up. So I'm just saying to have a little self-compassion and be reasonable about that.
Mm.
The other thing I wanted to chat with you about and chat, and I'd love to hear from some listeners how they feel, is to come up with like weight goals or goals that have to do with showing up for acceptance by other people and um, external sort of rewards that come from looking better for friends, or buying into like the whole diet culture that we have here. And it really extends to feeling that if you're not like somebody on the magazine, or somebody that's like thin, rich, pretty, all of these kind of things by other people's standards, then you just don't make the mark. That something's wrong with you. And there's a lot of shame about that. There's a lot of negative self-talk and judgment. And it breaks my heart to hear people, the way they talk to themselves, about themselves. And I am hoping that people will stop that right now and turn into a little bit more of their like best friends, who they are. After all, you've known yourself longer than anybody else. And to kind of think about being healthy, like make sure you go to the doctor and have your labs checked and things like that, I think are important, and make sure that certain markers are okay. But just to feel that you have to lose weight because it's a competition, or because our culture says that that's the way people gain their self-esteem and their acceptance. I don't know. I'd love for people to start rethinking that. What are your thoughts on that, Sharon?
I think you need new friends. If they're always talking on you, you need to do this or you need to do that. And really, unless with my friends, I will tell them certain goals I want you to hold me to, and that they're open for discussion afterwards, things like that. But this idea of, sometimes you meet people. I went to an event not too long ago, and I hadn't seen a lot of the people in over a year. And the one thing I just noticed, not only directed at myself, but directed at others, so you kind of step back, fly in the wall position, and you watch. And it's like, oh my God, you look so great. Oh my gosh, you lost weight. Oh my God. And it was all this external validation. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the people either hadn't lost weight and they're like, I don't know what they're talking about, or and so that got some shame on them, that they accepted a compliment that was not truly earned. And I'm thinking, well, that's okay. That's kind of interesting that they're feeling guilty or whatever that was said. I just would love friends to be able to connect in a different way than all this external stuff. Like, what's going on for you? What successes have you had that I can celebrate with you? How can I serve you? Where do you need help right now? instead of, oh my gosh, you look so great. Did you, you've lost weight, and maybe they have, maybe they haven't, whatever. I just found it was such an interesting
Right.
dynamics, being that fly on the wall, watching all these people.
That's perfectly, perfectly said. That's such a great example. And, even though you go around, I mean, there's this, what they call like the thin privilege that, people have. And even like the medical community, they look at people who are sort of like look normal and have a normal weight differently than they do people in a larger body. And that has to kind of stop, because many times the person who is thinner is less healthy. You just don't know. I mean, there's just no way to, it's just a poor judgment, and it's not accurate. And, if we told people, if I told you there's this fabulous pill that I think you maybe should try, and if it's 95% guaranteed not to work, would you want to try that? No.
No.
And that's exactly what the studies have shown that diets are. Diets don't work, because deprivation and restriction totally backfire. So people go in this cycle, and they get hungry, and then they give in, and then they feel they overdo it. Then they, the whole thing, and they feel guilty and remorse, and then they say, okay, I'm going back, and then the whole thing starts over and over. It's really a problem. And the shame that comes with that, and the remorse and the regret, is exhausting, and it's so needless. So what I'm begging everyone to do is step back, take a look, and if you're healthy, celebrate that. And if there are certain steps you could take to get healthier, I would say that would be the best thing you could do. But it's not about the weight. It's not about the food. There's so many more things in life. And no, I'm not saying that, if your blood sugars are off, or something is like not going right, well, you need a certain mineral, you need a certain vitamin, then we need to tweak, of course. But I just don't want people to be judging their health by the culture in the latest People magazine, where people are half their size and things like that, because it's just really it's just so denigrating to so many people who are just really, could be really terrific and happy the way they were, if it weren't for people who were saying they should be something that they're not.
That's true. And even taking it one step further, oftentimes autoimmune is called an invisible disease, because people can maybe look good on the outside, but we don't know the pain they're in from the fibromyalgia, or the gut-wrenching pain from something like Crohn's disease, and all the other ones that, looking at them, they may, without any previous knowledge, they may look fine. And I think a lot of times you get all these outside judgments that that's hard not to take them personal at times. And a couple of the things that I have found really helpful is this work. I have a beautiful mentor who years ago has this little tip, and he calls it, you carry a Q-tip with you. So I know it's a brand name, but it's QTIP. And you put it in your pocket if this is something that you tend to do. And I used to do it. I don't anymore, because I've learned. And it's about, you put it in your pocket to remind you to quit taking it personally. And every time you see it, this little Q-tip, visual reminder to quit taking it personally. And that was such a profound time for me. And yes, it's a learning curve, guys. You get better and better the more you practice it, that it's not about you. It's, is someone else's issue. It's not about you. It makes life so much easier when we're able just to step back and say, that's not who I am. I know who I am, and that's not who I am.
I love that. I have to remember that. I might be calling you and say, what does that stand for again? But that's really fabulous. Thank you. I'm so glad you shared that. And so I think that, like one of the best resolutions that someone could make in 2020 would be, to listen to what they're saying, be mindful about what are they saying to themselves, and say, okay, let's just change the dialogue and upgrade the conversation, and find things that are going right, instead of like so much of the, negativity. I just feel like that's just so important to me, because I always hear that so much of what's going on with people in many cases is the stress that they're putting on themselves.
Absolutely. And I've got a little bit of stress on a time pressure right here. I got to take a quick commercial break. I'm fine. And when we come back, we're going to hear more from Roberta about New Year's resolutions and my diets don't work. We've covered that, as well as some other fun tips to get our year off to a right start. So we'll be right back. Sayler.com. And tonight we're here with Roberta Mittman, and she is a dedicated alternative healthcare practitioner and health and wellness coach, if you've been hearing. She's also the founder of the Park Avenue Center for Wellbeing in New York City. And I like to call her our resident health and wellness expert. And we first chatted about some of these New Year's resolutions, and I'll say diet for sure. Everybody wants to be on a diet. And I love that Roberta said, diet, let's do away with that word and get a little more mindful in what that means and how that means about wellness. And one of the things, Roberta, I just want to swing about, turn a little bit on, is as you were talking about doing all of these different tips or things, and one of the things you mentioned, and I like to use the words that we use here on the Autoimmune Hour, and that's optimize one thing every day. It's not about taking giant leaps like today I'm going to go to the gym and run on the treadmill for 20 minutes where you haven't seen a treadmill in years type of thing, but just choosing something to optimize and optimize every day. And thanks to the glorious thing of exponential compounding, that it's not just one optimization. Once you optimize and then you put another optimization on top of it, another optimization on top of it, pretty soon you've got quite a stack of optimizations. And so we've talked about diet. We've talked a little bit about forget the gym, just do movement, do things that you like to do instead of saying, I've got to get to the gym. Any other tips that you give people to optimize their health, just what I call incrementally?
Sure. Well, this is wintertime. I'm in New York, and you're clear across the continent here.
Yes, but equally chilly and wet.
It is. So I always think, about winter wellness. I think that's really an important time, because things seem to be so contagious, and people are walking around, trying to either avoid getting sick, avoid getting the flu, of course, and remaining, healthy. But there are probably, several things that everybody could be doing no matter where you live. And I think that's really important. I think for me, one of the things is to, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to take any supplements and I don't want to take any vitamins. I tend to be more of a supplement girl. And I think, especially in the winter months, some of the foods people are not eating as many fruits. They're not eating as many vegetables like from their garden, and everything has to be trucked in, and they just don't really look as vibrant. So I think making sure that you are supplementing with making sure you have enough protein, having extra servings of fruits and vegetables that are in season. I think that that's really important. And really making sure that you're taking things like extra, like vitamin C. Many women are vitamin D deficient, and they don't know that. You just can't get that from the sun. Sometimes you need to take that. There are things like a lot of the echinacea and astragalus and all of those wonderful like herbals. They're very immune promoting. And I think that that's also very good too. Do you have something to add to the mix for that, Sharon?
Well, I do, to talk to your care provider about these different supplements.
Always.
Because sometimes they're contraindicated for autoimmune patients.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes their herbal supplements can be certain ones depending on what medications you're taking for your
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune,
Mm-hmm.
as well as
Totally.
I love, it's a very inexpensive lab to get what is your vitamin D level. I live on the Pacific Northwest, and so mine is typically low unless I supplement it. But you guys, listener might live in a different environment where they get more of the natural vitamin D. So, but it's an inexpensive blood test, so ask for those types of labs as well, because any competent care provider will be more than happy to help you figure out what you're missing nutritionally. Now,
Absolutely.
I did have a question though about when you said foods in season. I find the problem with most of the markets around where I live, it's the same food season after season. It doesn't do like when, I'll say my grandparents' time, when the kales and the squashes and the cabbages are popular in the winter months because they last and they grow into the cold season. And then the tomatoes and some other things are, definitely more types of summer vegetables. I don't see that my local grocery store provides seasonality to foods and veggies. So let's talk a little bit more about when you said in season. It really perked my ears up because I'm like, it's the
Yeah.
same fruits and vegetables in my grocery store week after
Year
week.
round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Year round. Well, ideally, I mean, like when I live in New York here, there are no berries, so to speak, that are being grown around here. And some of the fruits and things like that, they come from, they're imported, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I certainly don't want to say that it is, but many times they're picked and they're sprayed to keep them fresh for a longer period of time. So that's why I would mention that sometimes, and you just don't know if they are or not, that's the problem. They didn't come off a vine anywhere around here. And some people can't have that. So my solution is, yes, you can certainly try them and enjoy them, because many of the fruits and vegetables, I'm sure, are fine. Ideally, it would be things that are in season. For instance, like apples and things like that now, or that were picked recently as opposed to last year, kind of thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention about that is one things we can do is find some of the things that are more seasonal to winter, fall, some of the things that you mentioned, and cook them differently. I mean, I don't know if people have an Instant Pot yet, but that's like a really fabulous way to make new kinds of soups and stews and hearty warm meals. I might want to mention that in Chinese medicine, to eat with the seasons means that eating cold food in the wintertime is really rather contraindicated. Eating really cold food and ice is not a great idea at any time, but warming foods and things like that would be, of course, suggested now would be a healthier option.
I'm going to have to get on this Instant Pot bandwagon. I keep hearing about it, and yet that's where it is. I'll have to talk to you offline about getting on that bandwagon. That sounds so
Sure.
interesting to me.
A
For one
pressure
thing,
cooker. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I am of the old school where I remember my grandmother's pressure cooker, and I know the Instant Pot is nothing like that, but I remember my grandmother's pressure cooker as a young child of something that I was slightly scared of. It would make this rattling noise and the steam would come out of it. So maybe I have to explore that and realize that this newfangled thing is really something awesome. A lot of my friends are talking about it, yet I haven't jumped on the bandwagon yet.
Yeah. It used to be a little scary, but it's not scary anymore. It's a new generation of those. So yeah, we'll definitely chat about that. But you can do so many things with it that used to take so long, and it's still healthful. It's not like putting it in the microwave. They're not the same thing, but it does take a shortens cooking time.
Awesome. Now, one thing when you were talking about cooking it different ways, I mentioned to you before we hopped on to do the interview that I had actually made the spiralized noodles out of a squash this afternoon for my lunch, and it took me maybe a minute more, but it gave me a new way to eat a squash instead of
How perfect is
baked
that?
or whatever. It was a fun way to change it up. And I had some family members over who are younger, and they enjoyed the squash too, looking at it as more of a noodle-like than, oh no, you know, they've given me this big chunk of squash to get through. So it just even changing it up that way is oftentimes a lot of fun way to get in other vegetables that maybe you're like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great idea. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is the concept of having bone broth for some extra protein and maybe some collagen. What are your feelings about that? A lot of people are sipping bone broth during the day, and they seem to be really, finding that to be a very helpful practice.
I enjoy bone broth. I've had a difficulty finding a good bone broth. I have two that I use now. But one interesting thing, sometimes with autoimmune, you have food allergies or things that maybe weren't technically an allergy, but give you some upset tummy or something like that. And a lot of the bone broths are not just the meat product, the turkey, beef, chicken, whatever you choose, and that's it. A lot of times you'll find that they have, when you read the ingredients, you'll find they have a whole long list of things like onion, garlic, and spices, and some of them even that look healthy, there's some words there that you can't pronounce. So read the labels with bone broth, and also check out, there's different consumer types of places where you can find where they test these different things. One of the things, and this is just an article I was reading about, the different qualities of product and bone that they put into bone broth is critical to know. Is this, of the highest quality versus something else? And so I say, I am a huge fan of bone broth as long as you do the research on what's the right bone broth for you. And one of the things I do with it, instead of just sipping on it like broth throughout the day, I use it as a stew base. And
Yes.
so I'll put the veggies in there
Right.
and let it kind of soak in all the goodness that way, and I'll have a lovely stew base.
Yep, I do the same thing. And I'm just going to mention this one more time because we're talking about the Instant Pot. It's really, I don't do it personally, but it cuts making your own into a fraction of the time.
I have
I don't know if
stories
I
of bone
sold you
broth.
on it. Yeah.
I'd love to know from you listeners out there, if you make your own bone broth. I have stories of my one and only attempt at making it, and that's when I decided to look for a commercial product that met
It's a
my
very lengthy
dietary requirements.
Yes, it's a lengthy process, right?
Oh, not only is it a lengthy process, especially without an Instapot, this was in a slow cooker, and
Uh-huh.
but finding the quality of product that I wanted on my own, doing research on the different farms and the different product on my own, that took a lot of time. And by the time I got done, it was sort of it was exhausting. And then also it takes a long time in a slow cooker to cook and doesn't always smell the best. I found that it was rather aromatic to the whole house for the time it was cooking. And yeah, I have to say that adding the chicken feet was the final thing for me. I just went, yeah, no. Just one of those things I'd rather not know how it was made.
Yeah, right. There you go. Oh,
other than it meets my requirements of being healthy and quality product.
goodness, that's crazy. I know. Yeah, yes, count me out on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for home cooking. I think that cooking at home and having family and friends over is always so much more fun to me than going out to eat, because oftentimes with autoimmune, and even if you don't have an autoimmune, so many people have dietary choices or restrictions now, that I find that sometimes just having a home cooked meal is as fun, or maybe sometimes more fun than going out to eat and having family members worried about, I had a friend tell me about, they found a pizzeria that said they did gluten-free pizza. Oh, how wonderful for you. You can go out, but they cooked it in an oven that had gluten pizza in it,
Oh,
and
so it's
realized that
cross-contamination. Yes.
yeah. And she came back and she said, well, I said, how was the pizza? And this was, she used the words, I'd been glutened. as if it was some sort of disease or something. I was glutened, and realized that even this minute cross-contamination had affected her. And it was so
Oh.
profound to her that she was really disappointed, but understanding that sometimes those restrictions can be that subtle.
Oh, totally. Actually, now that you're mentioning that, right around here in this area, cauliflower is really having a moment right now. I mean, it's cauliflower pizza is a very a big attraction these days. So we get around the whole gluten issue by having cauliflower crust and
As long
cauliflower.
as it's cooked in a non-contaminated oven.
That's such a good point, Sharon.
I think
Yes.
this was the base of that too. She said, I think she said something like, it didn't taste like cauliflower. However, you know, and I don't blame the restaurants. I mean, gosh, having two pizza ovens, whatever, and a lot of people don't realize the subtlety of being gluten sensitive or celiac. So just to be aware of that. But yeah, it's amazing to me that I had cauliflower rice not too long ago, and it was amazing. It was awesome. And I have to put up my hand first that if you had said, "Here, eat a piece of raw cauliflower," I would say, "Yeah, no, not for me."
Yeah. No, it's really like making a big comeback, and it's you can do so much with it. So it's very versatile. As this poor, like, kind of plain overlooked vegetable, is making a comeback. So that's really kind of nice. So that's one of the things that you can do a lot with. So I think in terms of also, just with winter wellness, I mean, I just can't. I know everyone keeps on saying, wash your hands, wash your hands. And I think it's just one of my rituals. And, another controversial thing is, should you use like all of those, what do you call those, antibacterial?
Oh, like hand sanitizers or the
Hand
antibacterial wipes?
sanitizers. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
guilty of that. Because I'm on subways all the time and touching all kinds of things that like millions of people have touched, and I just kind of watching things like that. But if you're just even, like touching a grocery cart is like one of the most germ infected places that you could possibly find. Who knew? And wiping it a little bit with something, just kind of like protecting yourself a little bit from the flu and things like that, I think are good to do. I really think that, taking some precautions is probably a really good idea.
And I've gotten really good at hitting elevator buttons with my elbow. So
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Just, sometimes that's all it takes, in the wintertime. Everybody's so closed in, and things are just so much more contagious. So, I'm just happy that I can, like, it's the wintertime and I can, like, wear gloves to touch things, around, like taxis and all kinds of things. In the summer, I mean, I don't laugh because I've thought about it, but it's in the wintertime, it's really especially important,
right. It is. And I'm not laughing because there's many times when I travel that I actually have a little baggie that has some non-latex gloves in there. And I do have some specific herbal essential oil wipes. They're like what we'd call a hand sanitizer, but they're essential oils that are blended
Yes.
to be that antibacterial. And I put them in there. And the only thing about the essential oils is that it's rather fragrant. And when you're using it on a plane, sometimes people are looking at you like, what's that smell?
I know.
They may like it or they may not, depending on the oils that you've chosen. But anyway, I use those, and I have the little gloves in there, and I don't mind wearing the gloves and doing my little wipe down, and I leave the gloves on depending, or just peel the gloves off and put them back in the little baggie and toss the baggie.
Oh, you're definitely got this down to a science, because I just got off the plane yesterday, and I'm always wiping. I'm that person who's always wiping down everything everywhere on the plane, but I don't use gloves. I just take like a wipe,
Yeah.
and go all over there. But, that's probably a good idea. And I didn't see anybody with masks on, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
It-
Well, I did see, I recently flew and I saw a young person with a mask on, but I always question because I've been known to wear masks, not because I was on the plane sick, but because the person next to me starts, coughing or sneezing. I've been known to put the mask on, but it's an inexpensive mask. What are your thoughts about a mask? I mean, to me, there was a lot of places where air could have gotten in. I suppose it's better than nothing, but I knew it wasn't as quality like a surgeon's type of mask for sure.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, the research that I've done on those is, like you said, better than nothing, but the fabric that makes it, there's holes in there and things can get right in through those. So
Yeah,
they're
and
really
well, and it
more
didn't fit tight to my cheeks either,
tight.
so I'm sort of like going, okay, well, it could come in at an angle here, I suppose.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, I don't know. It's something, worth looking at, I guess, for some people who are just so sensitive and will, catch something, at the just at the blink of an eye. And so for those people, it might be worth investigating into something that's a little bit better. Especially
Yeah.
someone who's, autoimmune challenges, things like that. I mean, I think it's really important when you're in crowds and large groups in the wintertime, especially around, when it's around these areas
Oh
where it's
yeah,
cold.
especially
Yeah,
yeah. Especially in tight areas like subways, airplanes, things like that too, where you can't be 6 or 8 feet away. If
I
someone
know.
starts
Yeah.
to coughing or sneezing, you can't get far enough 10 feet away or something like that and move on. So that's so true. We need to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to just chat some more about all sorts of things here. We're just having fun talking about winter and the new year and leave. And is Okay, a lot of people indulge in the holiday seasons. And one of the things about resolutions, I think losing weight, exercising more, and everything is detoxing, if I wanted to put a bigger umbrella over it. What are your thoughts about the word detox and does detoxing work?
Great question, Sharon. Your body has wonderful detox organs already built in. And I think it, for the most part, probably does a very good job. However, there are certain habits that we get into. And you could use the word cleanse, you could use the word take a vacation, a break from some of the things that you're doing and give your body a rest. There's different ways that you could think about it. But I think the most valuable part of a detox is to somehow break yourself from some of the habits that you've gotten into, especially from the holidays. It started with Thanksgiving and went even with Halloween for some people, Thanksgiving, the Christmas holidays, the New Year's. Now we have Super Bowl coming up, so that it will go through that, and probably could also extend to Valentine's Day, depending on how you are. So it really can be a rather long time. And it's a lot of times people are just overindulging, and that becomes their new normal. So if you want to go back to what you were doing before that, and hopefully it wasn't like having so many treats and use so much sugar and so many things that you really don't want, but they're just there, this is the perfect way to do that, because in 10 days, you can actually distance yourself from it a little bit and have a reboot, have like a pause and an interruption and restart again in another way without some of those things. And I find
So,
it's very effective.
so 10 days. What do we, give me some idea of what do we do during those 10 days?
Okay. In 10 days, well, there's different ways of doing this. And I like to offer those different ways. But there comes with the one that I like, comes with a food plan that guides you into the basic eating. There's a basic eating plan And then if you want to, you can start, if you're a little bit more ambitious, you can start to cut out some more foods, and then you are at a certain place for 2 days, and then you start to add them back in. So it goes kind of like this.
So it goes down and then into a valley, and then the valley for 2 days, and then you climb back out. Okay.
Exactly. Or you can stay in this one wheat-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free zone. And it sounds like, oh, there's nothing left for me to eat. But trust me, there is plenty. There's no starvation on this at all. There's meats, there's vegetables, there's fruits, there's nuts, there's tons of different things you could eat. You could eat out on it. You could cook at home on it. There's tons of options, fish, things like that. But you are going to be hopefully staying away from those things just for 10 days. And believe it or not, in 10 days, when you reintroduce it, it will be at a different level than when you started. And that's really the goal. And that's just to give yourself an interruption into some of the habits that are just there. You know, all these foods many times have snuck into the refrigerator, on the kitchen counter, just because you're used to doing it. So it breaks some bad habits and just is a nice refresher, I like to say. I do it throughout the year, seasonally. Some people say, oh, I don't want to do it for 10 days. I want to do it for 28 days. Well, you could do that. But those people who say that say, well, I did it for 28 days. Thanks, Roberta. I'm never doing it again. It's too much. The 10 days seems to be totally doable and repeatable. So that's something that I like to encourage people to do, you know, several times during the year. I do it myself, and during those 10 days, I eat, you know, things that I personally really like, and I let go of some of the things that, you know, have snuck in that, you know, I really don't need. They don't serve me anymore, so it's fine. So I think detoxing is really letting go of things that no longer serve you in general.
I like that. So we could do like an emotional detox, and we could do like a friend detox, and I'm thinking of all these sorts of things.
Yes, decluttering detox.
Yes.
Emotional detox, things that no longer serve you. You can start to distance away from them and find some other things that do serve you instead.
I love that. And this was a resolution I made for 2020, and it was about focusing on myself and trusting myself this year. That was my resolution. It's a kind of a big global one, but it was like, you know, really trusting your gut this year. And when you get that feeling of, yeah, no, whether it's a food, an acquaintance, whatever, you know, yeah, if you get that, yeah, no feeling, trusting that. And I had to do some work around that as I felt that's what I wanted as my resolution. I was interesting. I had to do a little work around. I kept feeling a slight little twinge about selfishness. And so one of the things I worked on with myself was like, no, it's not selfish to have this focus of trusting your gut, trusting your intuition, and focusing on yourself.
It's so essential. It's so important to kind of feel that you're back home in yourself and you can trust that. And so many of us are just second guessing all the time and looking to see, well, what are other people going to want me to do, or what other people are going to want me to say, or fear of judgment. But I think that really trusting trusting your gut is really like, it's a wonderful thing to be able to do.
And I find people with autoimmune sometimes get in that fact of not trusting their gut anymore. They're being told by all sorts of professionals that you need to do X, Y, Z. Here are the stats. It's going to be that and this, and you're going to end up like that. And instead of trusting your gut and saying, no, I'm not going to be that stat. Beautifully said.
And yes, I think it's very important to trust your own instinct and be an advocate for yourself. And I think, it's very easy to, like you said, second guess everything. But, sometimes, look, the worst thing is you make a mistake. You know, everything you can course correct. It's really okay, but I think trusting your instinct is really important. And feeling that, you know, what you feel matters. It's very important. And, you know, I hope that more people will listen to your sound advice and trust themselves as they're going through an autoimmune journey, or really of anything.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio.